So I'm Robert Silman, and we were engaged by the Friends many years ago, it seems like, to undertake a restoration of the Shaw Memorial. Liz has mentioned that maintenance work was being done by a stone conservator, Ivan Meijer, and Ivan and I have been friends for many years, and he called me in and said, would you look at this with me? And can we go to the next slide?
Yes.
See, this is what you all know the monument will look like. And of course, there's this beautiful monument from the turn of the 20th century with a bronze bas-relief by St. Gaudens and the surround of the stonework by McKim, Mead, and White. So two of the great artistic and architectural treasures of the early part of the 20th century combined to make this monument. You have taken care of it over the years, there's no question about it. And the last major restoration was in the 1980s, but even since then, stuff has been going on. And the problem is that stuff has been going on there because the original construction of it was not as robust as we would have liked it. Mostly it is the fact that the stones that surround the bronze are not really connected to anything or even to themselves. And as a result, in this terrible climate, this wonderful climate that we live in, this temperate climate with freeze-thaw cycles, we get the fact that water gets into the joints. It's impossible to keep it out. And because of expansion and construction, they start to push the stones. And things move, and it's almost impossible to stop that from happening. And I'm going to show you some pictures of what's going on. So there's three parts of this that we're doing conservation work on. The first is the bronze itself. It looks like it's one big piece, but it's not. It's some 20 different pieces that were cast and put together, and then they're soldered together, and I don't know how the bronze people do it, but the joints disappear for the most part, of course, and they're gorgeous. And then the surface is maintained. Now, in the past, it's been maintained with some sorts of lacquer, but the current treatment recommendations seem to be not to use that, but to use wax. We're in the midst of trying to get our hands on that, hands around that now, because the wax technique requires a lot more frequent maintenance, but it seems to be preferable. So anyway, but we are planning to take the bronze down completely and go back into the pieces. We don't know how the pieces are put together, by the way. There must be some kind of flanges on the back that are bolted together, but we've never seen it, so we don't know. It's going to be dismantled, taken to a shop, and conserved. There are splits in it and things wrong with it. It'll be refurbished, brought back on site, put together, the joints sealed up, and then the finish coat put on it. So that's number one, the bronze conservation. Number two is the stone surround, and I'll show you pictures of that, which is a big monument because it goes way down on the common side. And there's a lot wrong with that needs to be fixed. And the third part is the plaza itself, which is a herringbone brick pattern. And that, from the top side, looks beautiful. From the underside, looks terrible. So let's start and take a look. This is a close-up of the bronze. And I don't know if you can see it. Here's a seam in the bronze. I should use the laser pointer. And this seam is opening up. It's white. And there are many other places like that. If you look closely, you can see that it needs some work and some maintenance. So we have a conservator on our team who is specializing in conservation of bronze monuments, and she is wonderful and excellent and is leading the charge on that. Here's another piece. You can see when the seams open up and water gets in there, you get oxidation happening, and whatever the chemical reaction is, it begins to leak and weep through. So there are places like that throughout the monument that need to be fixed. The stone. This is one of the major issues. What we've decided to do is dismantle the stone after we take the bronze out, take it down to the plaza level, and rebuild it. But in rebuilding it, the point is to tie it together and to something else. So it's a very shallow monument. We have a space in there of about 8 inches, and we're going to put a steel frame, a stainless steel frame in there that will serve as the anchor, and all the stone will be tied back to that. So hopefully it will prevent it from moving in the future, and should there be a seismic event, it will not fall down. It will be resistant for that. So it's 2 birds in 1 stone. It's a relatively inexpensive fix once you take the monument apart. But you can see things like here. This is a cracked stone. This says Robert Gould Shaw. It's a major piece of stone, and there's a crack right between Robert and Gould. And you know, it's symbolic of what else is going on. The size of the stone from the backside, you can see how enormous it is. Now we're only taking it down to the granite level. The top part is marble, the bottom is granite. We're not going to conserve the granite. It's moving slightly, but not at the same kind of rate. And again, cost is cost. We can't do the whole thing. But all of the stuff from there up is going to be removed and reset. One of the real problem areas is the ballast rod. These decorative stones that go all around. They are walking off the plaza. There's been movement 2, 3, 4 inches on some of those pieces of stone, really significant. And when the stone conservator comes, they don't really have equipment to move it back, so they kind of do what they can. They take a crowbar if they can and move it a little bit, but in reality, the joint that opens, they just keep filling it and filling it and filling it, so it gets worse and worse and worse. So that's one of the major issues that we have to deal with. From this picture also, you can see one of the 2 elm trees here, and you may know that in the middle of the plaza are 2 historic elm trees purportedly planted by John Hancock.
Purportedly. Who lived across the street and got approval by the Board of Selectmen in 1780 to plant elm. So they are even more significant, or at least as significant as the monument.
So they, of course, predate the monument, and it has been part of the maintenance of the monument to maintain the trees. And the arborist has done wonders, but if you look at those trees, they are really in terrible shape. They've been pruned and pruned and pruned, and there really is almost nothing left of them. Nobody's willing to predict how long they might live, so they're not scheduled to be taken down or replaced. Though it's our feeling that if they have another 20 or 30 years, that's a lot, I think. But we're keeping them, okay? And that's part of the historic nature, okay? You can see some of the problems with the joints. This is a finger, okay? Somebody's finger in the joint. All of these joints have lost mortar over the years. Water gets in, freezes, pushes the mortar out. It's a real problem to maintain it. You can see all of these joints really open and terrible looking here. Next. Again, you know, this is a crucial area right where the monument comes in. You can see the bronze here. The top of this is bronze. Comes down on this piece of stone, and that piece of stone comes down on the big base. And that's where people, you know, that's what they touch. They're right there. So on the left picture, we took one of the stones out at the base. Not an easy job, but if you do that for a living, you know how. And look behind it, and we find that there's brick behind it, and the brick over the years has deteriorated terribly. I think the next slide may be a close-up. No, it's not. Let's go back. So in looking at this, you can pick the mortar apart with your finger, and this is what supports the upper monument. The bronze rests on this, so not a good thing. To conserve this means taking the whole monument apart anyway, because to get at it, you'd have to do that, and you can't just repoint it. The mortar, we drilled it, and the mortar is kind of rotten all the way in. So that's really what made our decision for us, that we don't think that the base that holds up the bronze is in good enough shape to warrant rebuilding everything around it without fixing that. So this means taking everything down. Again, this is not a good picture of it, but we call these the skyward facing joints. Anytime you have the top thing or a railing that's open to water coming directly on it, it's very difficult to maintain. And over the years, these things have lost their caps. We fill it with lead, actually, and that all needs to be maintained too. The plaza is this beautiful herringbone brick, and if you were to walk on it, it's pretty good. It's very nice, actually, and you don't think anything is wrong with it. And from the top side, there isn't anything wrong with it. But we did, that's me, okay, in my business suit. We took some bricks out and actually drilled a hole in it, and we found out what the exact composition was, and we were able to draw a picture to confirm what's there. There are steel beams about every, 31 inches, 23, and they vary. No, 30. 30 inches, 23 inches, 30 inches, 31 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 I'm sorry, that's halfway. So it's 5 feet on center, roughly. Brick arches in between. On top of the brick is a concrete slab that was not original. That was put on, we think, at some time later in one of the refurbishments. Then there's a layer of waterproofing, which was done in the 1980s, a sand bed, and then the brick. And again, because it was refurbished in the 1980s, it has maintained itself quite nicely. But when you go underneath, it's a crawl space only, you see wonderful stalactites. We should sell admission to this. There's a little crawl space window over here that you can get into, and once you get in, you can crawl around. That's the reason for wearing that suit, because it's really a mess down there. And you know, here are these stalactites which are growing off the bottom of the steel beam. Next. In some places, however, the steel beam is quite pure. It doesn't have stalactites. Can we go back? Go back one more. But we know that they're active because this is a little picture, and the stalactite actually has a drip of water on it. So we know that it's still leaking because it's wet. But we've also admitted defeat, that we don't think we're going to be able to keep water out of here forever. There are the other edges. The edge where we meet Beacon Street is always going to be a problem. So we're using a new modern technology called Cathodic Protection, which is that we impress very, very low voltage current into these steel beams with a transformer. You plug it into the wall, you put an electrical contact on there. It's not quite as simple as that. And you do this very, very low current, and it prevents corrosion because it reverses the electric process of corrosion. What was an anode becomes a cathode, what was a cathode becomes an anode, and it's a technology that's being used nowadays for applications like this, and we're doing it a lot in historic buildings. So we are doing that. It requires almost no maintenance, but a little bit. There is electricity in the monument anyway, so we think we're okay. So 3 parts: bronze, stone, and steel underneath.
I'm sure we could spend the rest of our time together with it, because it's so exciting, but Bob, thank you so much.
Well, it's a pleasure to see you all. Good luck to all.